it's become what I understand WoW as. I haven't played WoW, especially at a level where someone can say that they're done with their character, where they've done the battlegrounds. Torghast, I think, is a thing that a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of people say is a thing. But when you get to end game WoW, I mean, what are you doing, right? You're running the raids. You're doing the content. That specific content, because that's the only thing that's going to drop what the fuck you want it to. You're going to go do your Torghast. You're going to go do your battlegrounds. And at the end of the day, once you have your PvP and PvM gear, you're done. Like, the fact that you can finish content like that, where RuneScape does have a wealth of content on it, and they can repurpose some of that for PvP. I think you can repurpose stuff like Necronium, where, I mean, who's going to use Necronium realistically, other than Iron Man, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to use Necronium on any sort of current RuneScape 3 stuff? Repurpose it for PvP. Give it a specific effect for PvP. That way, Necronium has a use again. Go to, what is it, Soul Wars, Castle Wars. Have something there that maybe gives you like a PvP sigil, where it's specifically for PvP. You put in the pocket slot, or maybe even the aura slot, or have specific auras that you get from those
I mean,
for
it
PvP.
doesn't need to be that big. It doesn't need, like, yes, there should be PvP rewards, right? But
Yeah.
it shouldn't be super niche to only PvP. Not necessarily like
Hmm.
it should benefit for stuff for PVM content, but it should be just something that works, right? I think
Hmm.
one of the pieces of content that is still relevant to this day, even though it's been out for years, is clans, right?
Hmm.
You go to a clan, you do the resource gathering, and then you get a 6% XP boost just for doing that.
Yeah.
It's very simple, it's very rewarding, and it applies to many other areas of the game. You can take that same 6% XP boost and create a PvP system where, similar to like a gacha game type, right?
Hmm.
Where you can just say, oh, do X amount of PvP battlegrounds or whatever in RuneScape, and they'll do it
Hmm.
just for that 6% XP reward. And it doesn't mean that they have to be good at PvP, just the fact that it's simple enough so that if they're aware of it, and if they want to get better, the opportunity is there to get better.
And as long as it's optional, as
Yeah,
someone who comes from Destiny 2, regardless of if who wants to say, "Oh, it's not an MMO," it functions like an MMO. I will stand by that.
yeah,
Having to go for something like Last Word, or other guns in the game, other exotics, where you have to go into PvP content and you have to either maintain a certain KD, you have to do things in PvP. The PvP and PvM just inherently don't mix. It's players like and prefer one or the other. If you like more patternistic gameplay, if you like knowing what to expect, if you like reacting to it, okay, you're gonna go play PvM. You're gonna go
yeah,
fight Jad, and it's gonna be a good time. If you're wanting that unpredictability, if you're wanting that clash of wills, that battle of wits, so to speak, you're gonna go into Duel Arena and you're gonna go have fun fighting someone that's able to switch on a dime. These are two separate player groups that you can technically overlap it as long as the incentive for doing so is optional
yes.
and it's not required for anything for each group to get to their specific endpoint.
Yeah, and also I think one of the major reasons why Jagex. Okay, I'm gonna say something which I think is gonna be extremely controversial. I think the
Okay.
staff at Jagex, the game development team, the balancing team, are incompetent at this point. Like they don't understand. Like I'm gonna use
Hmm.
League of Legends as an example. League of Legends has went through so many different gameplay ideas
Hmm.
in their new champs over 10 years, and they just keep doing more. And what
Hmm.
happens is that they eventually build an understanding of what the game can and cannot do. The problem with Jagex is that everything is very limited in the broad scope of what can be done. So, for
Hmm.
instance, every ability bar is effectively just a DPS bar with a different
Hmm.
flavor. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, broad strokes, but that's all it is.
Well, I mean, you have your wild magic versus your rapid strike versus your what's the fucking melee equivalent? One
Destroy,
second. Yeah,
destroy.
destroy. Like, okay, these are essentially the same ability, in essence. This is
Yeah.
your hard hitting ability for this specific style. That's you're I think you're hitting it right on the head there.
Uh,
And like, and I mean, defensives are in the game. I mean, you brought up a good point earlier. Defensives do exist, and as well as their impact in potentially and currently in PvP. I know you wanted to get into that specifically. Defensives do exist. I think Barricade is my favorite ability in the game, but it doesn't function in all circumstances, and it feels like it's a does Barricade function on this? Yes, no, and it's just an Excel
yeah.
spreadsheet, which feels odd.
Do you want to do my little challenge I set for you before this conversation? Now,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
brought. Okay, can you find the one ability that if you buff it, it will immediately see shields be useful in the game, and players will use
Give me 1 second, because I'm having to look through the defenses. Is it a defensive that you'd have to unlock via codex, or is it base?
it? Base.
Okay. No, so it's not that. Because I'm looking at Bash, but I don't think that's the one. Debilitate is already used. No, it's not divert because it's not base.
If you need a hint, I can give you a hint. It's a basic ability. I'll just say that.
It's basic.
Yeah, because you want to get players.
I'm gonna say Bash.
Yes, you're right. You said.
Oh, cool.
Okay, what would you do to change it? Like you can't change the core identity of it, but you can buff the numbers. What would you do to change the numbers?
The 10% of your shield's armor value. I mean, if you buffed that to, 50 is overkill. But even if you buffed it to like 30, I think that makes it even more viable.
Okay.
Because at that point, it makes shields relevant in doing damage.
Yeah. Okay. You said it, but the way that Bash works is it's based off your shield's armor value.
Yeah.
Not your armor value. So if it was based off
Plus
of
your defense.
so if it was based off of your armor value, that immediately makes an incentive for players to use higher armor rated weapons and items, similar to the Animate Dead. Not only that, but
Go for tank armor.
yeah. Not only that, but you can also change the damage, the 20 to 100%, to be more competitive with the other defense or the just damage dealing abilities. So you do those two changes instantly. Defenders are now more useful. Defenders now become
No. Yeah.
and then obviously that has a knock-on effect to shields because you need a shield before you can get to a defender. But just things like that, and I feel like that just like something like that that shouldn't be in the game. It shouldn't be in the game. That Bash, which is a shield-based ability that does damage, does really low damage, and it has zero scalability. That shouldn't be in the game, but it is.
And from a design philosophy, Jagex seems to have really taken into the, for lack of a better word, Unga Bunga mindset, Unga Bunga DPS damage, where, Langs exist for a reason. I like that you talk in the server called Lang, because he bought Langs day one when they were not near as expensive as they were. And I think he hit it right on the nail. He hit it right on the head because it does, Hurricane Destroy no longer share a cooldown. That inherently just makes it better. You can, the special attack all day can just go whatever. But that specific, it just gives you so much more value. But they do fall in the trap of dual wield always being better than single. Like if you have, like I have Seismic Wand, Seismic Singularity versus FSOA. Sure, you want to use FSOA for instability, but you're losing G-Conk, which is tied inherently to Wand Book. So they're really going into the Unga Bunga DPS mentality, and just they want people to do damage. And if glass cannons.
Maybe I'm in the minority, but the favorite part of a game, or like building a deck in a card game, is the building process, right? But there's very little tools to make make yourself unique. It's all DPS, and that's just, in my opinion, very lazy and boring. Now, obviously, that does come with the caveat that you now need to make sure you can balance all these, and you don't want to extend the complexity, so it's out of control for you. But something like Bash that we just went over, these changes should already be in the game, and they haven't done it. And there was a few interesting experiences I've had with the Runescape community. One of them being, I was watching a live stream, and one of the J mods, I can't remember his name, he said players like doing big DPS, and just the question was, why can't we make shields more viable? And he said players like doing DPS, and they want to press all the buttons, which that's a blatant lie. You spent so much time developing Revolution so that players don't press buttons, and not only that, but if you look at the tank identity outside of like just MMOs, but what is the core tank philosophy and identity? It is slow. It's slow. It's being bulky, doing consistent damage over a long period of time. So you're not gonna you're not gonna be doing 1 million damage, but you'll do 1,000,000
Yeah.
damage over a long period of time, which is consistent, and you're safe because of your increased health and resistances.
And I fall into that mentality. I really do 100%. I mean, D&D, I'll play a paladin every day of the week. And I guess RuneScape comes into a weird area for me because you're right. It focuses on that DPS, and they're not allowing for the tank role. Where I do like as diversive as this topic is, as the armor set is in this game. FSOA, Crypt Bloom, Animate Dead. It's
Yeah,
tanking to the highest degree.
yeah. Not only that, but that Animate Dead is a good example of players not understanding what Animate Dead does. I remember when Animate Dead was first released. Well, not
Mm-hmm.
more when it was teased, right? And I believe it was like
Mm-hmm.
Protox Gaming or Micro. One of
Mm-hmm.
them made a video and they said Animate Dead is like the worst ability out of all of them. These
I
are
feel like I remember.
these are the Temple of Sintiston. No, it's a temple.
Yeah.
It's a City of Sintiston rewards,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, are we from the same universe here? I mean, am I speaking different? Are they speaking different language? It literally says you get additional damage reduction if you have tank classified armor on. How is that not good?
I mean, I really have to like take things people say with a grain of salt anymore. Specifically for that reason. Like, what was it? I was in my server. I'm like, hey, why don't we put ZGS into an EOF? Why do we not do that? And everyone's like, well, oh, you just don't do that. You want to put like Stadius Warhammer. No joke. Like, few weeks after I questioned this, Evil Lucario puts ZGS in his EOF in his Carapac run, and it's like, am I just
No, no,
yes, yeah.
you're not at fault here. It's the community. It's like it's the insular nature of the community where only um they only view the game in respect of the or what they know. But if you look at like the trends of like the high level players in every game, they're always the trendsetters. They're always the one who looks at the ability and see what they can do to break it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why shields essentially. That's why Evil Lucario, like if you go into history and you ask him a question, "Oh, shield's useful," he'll obviously say yes. But if you go
I
into like
love that, man.
But if you go into like let's say Micro's channel, they'll say no. He'll say no. And the difference here is that Evil Lucario has a better game understanding of the overall game, whilst the most common players, like your Micro YouTube channels and RS guy, they don't. They don't push
Mm-hmm.
the boundaries of what can and cannot be done, and that's frustrating because it extends to a lot of parts of the game. If you're not willing to
Mm-hmm.
push the developers, then the developers won't give you anything new.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I want to push for PvP. I want to push for PvP to actually be a core part of the game like it used to be, and
Mm-hmm.
actually have some meaningful value in the long-term progression of the game, and maybe attract a new player base because it's no
Mm-hmm.
secret that OSRS has a larger player base than RuneScape 3. You can attribute one of the reasons
Yeah.
why is that it's more diverse because it has PvP, whereas RuneScape doesn't.